Hey everyone, welcome to Shimmer Girl Talks. I don't know if I'm going to be here long, but this came across Facebook the other day. Young women are facing a female angriness epidemic per study. They're the most unhappy and pessimistic group and view the world negatively, blaming men for their unhappiness. Now let's unpack this a little bit. And if you follow my channel, you probably already kind of know what I'm going to say. First of all, young women have been fed by modern women that their place is to be the strongest, most independent, don't need a husband, they can do everything by themselves, and, just be pack mules for the world. And what's happening is a lot of young women, in my opinion, are not living in the purpose that was created for us. And when I was a young woman, we got the, be independent message as well. You're looking at, I was a young woman in the 90s. We wanted to be independent because that's what we were told, but we also wanted a husband. We also wanted a family. If you look at the old shows of the 90s, Martin, Living Single, even Sex and the City, they were modern women, but they still wanted romance and a husband. Women, young women in particular, again, they're being told that you don't need romance, you don't need a husband. And what's happening is a lot of these women are finding themselves in situationships, in sexual situationships, where it's just empty promises from the man who doesn't want the woman beyond her body. And for a lot of these women, they go from that type of relationship to the next after that, and they're finding themselves empty and broken and miserable, because at the end of the day, that's not really what they want. They want to be swept off their feet and loved by a man. And let's also add, since there's Black women in the picture here, and I don't know the stories of how they grew up. Did they grow up with a married mom and dad? A lot of Black women are also growing up without a father in the home. And that is where you would get your first dose, that's not how I want to word it, of masculine love. Love from your father. Protection and provision from your father. Covering from your father. And then in the ideal world, even if you go off to college, you would still be prioritizing marriage somewhere down the line. So I find, especially with a lot of Black women, particularly online, and we know it happens in real life too, because so many Black women are not married. I work with them. The amount of baby mamas that I work with is insane. And so you have a lot of women who swallowed the Kool-Aid of, I can do it all by myself. I don't need a husband to be fulfilled. And when you look at it from a biblical standpoint, we were put here, the females, to be a helpmeet to a husband. And what's happening is this feminist ideology is anti-Bible, it's anti-God, and it's also in line with witchcraft and idolatry. You look at the modern women, they idolize goddess. They idolize the female, and they just want to write men off altogether. But then at the same time, they still want that male energy. And when you don't get that male energy in the right way, you become negative and pessimistic. Because again, a lot of these women, they're giving their bodies away to these men, only to find out that that man didn't want her like that. That's where you're getting angriness. And I don't know why people can't correlate all of this together. Fatherlessness, husbandlessness, raising children alone, high body counts, sexually irresponsible, of course you're going to get to the point where you're miserable and jaded. How come nobody else knows this? That all ties together. And then I was going to do this separate. What is her name? Handler. Something Handler. I can't think of her first name. But she's talking about straight men are trash, basically. But she is a woman not only in her 50s, but I think she has also bragged about deletion of babies. She's also bragged about being promiscuous. Now she wants to say men are trash. When you live your life in the fast lane, being promiscuous, you're going to crash out. At some point, you're going to crash out. And you're going to get to an age where you cannot go back to, certain lifestyles have an expiration date. Being loose in a caboose, that's not going to bode well for a lot of women later on in life. This is where a lot of women are getting their angriness from. And let's use Black women and white women as an example, since it always seems to be us pitted against each other. You could go into a store, and I'm not talking about always. There are exceptions to every rule, obviously. But you go into some of these stores and the white women's, hi, can I help you? And a lot of times, they're chipper and they're friendly. They can be the biggest devil ever, but they will still have a smile for you. Black women, you're standing at the counter. Can I help you? Out. Okay, well, that's going to be $45.13. You're getting your money ready. Y'all know I'm not lying. You know I'm not lying. So I think a lot of that comes from a lot of Black women, in my opinion, have been in survival mode because we had to be, they had to be. Meaning, raised by a single mother, you didn't get that love and covering from, like I said, your dad. So, and a lot of times these single mothers be hell on wheels. And I think I'm going off a little bit off tangent. But men in and of itself are not necessarily I don't want to say that they're not to blame. But again, when you've been told that you could be promiscuous, sleep around, have high body counts, of course you're going to get to the point of not trusting men, not liking men. I used to tell women decades ago to either A, maintain your virginity until you get married. And of course I was laughed to scorn. Or at least vet properly. If you cannot abstain, at least find out where his mind is before you got your legs gapped open for some man, whatever. So these women, they want to be whorish. But whorishness comes at a cost. And that's why a lot of these women are angry because, that's the point I wanted to make when I was a young woman. We used to talk about our future wedding dates with our husband. We romanticize all of that. Obviously, once you get married, you realize that marriage is, it's work. It's rewarding, but it's work. But it's also rewarding when you have a man that loves you, who covers you, who protects you. You do not get that for the most part from baby daddies. You don't get it from situationships. You don't get it from friends with benefits. A lot of these women out here are trying to get the benefit of having a husband without having to be a wife. And that's why so many of them are failing. Because they've told themselves, and I'm about to repeat myself, that they don't need a husband, that they don't need the nuclear family. And so they're trying to find other things to fill that void, only to be hurt in the end. That's why we have this epidemic, and nobody wants to call it out. But I just called it out, and I will talk to you later.